Welcome to this presentation on the paper A Simulation-Based Participatory Modeling Framework for Stakeholder Involvement in Urban Logistics. This is authored by Amita Singh, Magnus, Wiktorsson, Jannicke, Baalsrud, Hauge, and Seyoum, Eshetu, Birkie from the Royal Institute of Technology in Sweden. The scope of the paper is, as entitled, the combination of two themes. Simulation viewed as consisting of modeling and integration of heterogeneous agents and working through analysis, through visualization and numerical results, combined with the theme of participatory modeling, where we work with involvement of stakeholders from multiple of sectors and creating a collective consensus through iterative, flexible, and reflexive processes. And that's scoping it down to simulation-based participatory modeling, and we're working with urban logistic as a field. So the motivation to this paper is that we, as said, we work with the participatory modeling. We include simulation models in order to allow stakeholders to interact with their different objectives when they have competitive objectives, if we say so, for instance, economics and sustainability. And the effort is to establish a framework that bring together these types of participatory modeling and simulation, focusing on the domain of urban logistics. And that's what we haven't found when reviewing literature. So we also wanted to see a ladder of participation, which demarcates all the roles and responsibilities for the domain. So the research design behind this framework that we present is one field that we work on from a literature base that we summarized the existing literature in the domain. We determined the scientific gap and established a framework based on literature in parallel to an empirical process where we have been working with case studies with both data collection and simulation model building and verified the models as such. In the data collection, we have worked through semi-structured interviews as well as quantitative data in order to build the models and verify the models specifically. And then we also have worked with validation of the specific models. The overall framework for how to work with the stakeholders and this participatory element has not been validated so far. It has been kind of developed throughout the process and the project that is running. However, I would like to emphasize in this paper, we are not in detail describing either the literature state of the art or the specific case studies that we have conducted. The purpose of this paper is actually to describe the framework and in order to take the next step of the validation of the framework. Very short on the literature side, we have, of course, done it in a fairly traditional review, structured literature review setting. So we have had a scoping phase where we determined the research gap that we want to focus. We have selected specific databases, Scopus and Google Scholar, and we have worked with the search strings and inclusion-exclusion criteria in order to determine the papers that are of interest. And then, as you see in the search string, we have worked with participatory modeling, design model, as well as stakeholder involvement or participation. It has not been focused on urban logistics, as you see in the search string, but we have applied it to urban logistic case. So what was determined is that we, at the end, found 63 articles and eliminating duplicates, etc., done a descriptive and thematic analysis. However, again, this process is not described very in detail in the paper. Rather, we describe the framework and try to detail that. In the framework, we divide between two types of participation. So we have what we call active stakeholders and passive stakeholders. The active stakeholders are those that are involved in a particular case study, and they come from a multitude of fields. They typically provide data to the simulation models, and they are active in discussing these type of goal conflicts that you might have, and how to resolve them and set the precedence of demands. Then we have the passive stakeholders that are not directly involved in a specific case study. They are hence not involved in the model building and setting the precedence of demands for that specific case, but they're involved in the dissemination process and also learning in the learning process. So this is the framework that we describe in the paper, basically. I will go into details and the different phases. I just wanted to show the overall picture of it. There are a number of ways of interaction. There is a central iterative process. We have a number of case studies that are done within the scope of a bigger project. So let me go through the different parts of it. There are three levels of abstraction. There is the overall project level, the lighter gray, the big one. We have a more focused area, each specific case study that also has a scope, of course. And then we have, for each case study, we have a number of simulation models. So there is the project, there is the case study, and there are simulation models. That's the first level of abstraction. Projects may, of course, then have more than one case study. We determine 6 levels of participation. We have the overall information level, where both active and passive stakeholders are involved. We have consultation for a specific case. We have co-creation, co-deciding, co-managing, and at the end, the dissemination of the overall project. The inner core of the framework is based on simulation-based participatory modeling, where we have 3 specific dimensions. We have the orange part that concerns the stakeholder perspectives, where you set the objectives, the policies, the input data, and all of that. You have different types of computer-aided simulations. You might have agent-based or discrete event or process simulation, etc. Different types of models and simulations. And then you have discussion and negotiations, where you iteratively feedback and remodel, etc. So that's it's an iterative process and a kind of a spiral process throughout the project. It's seemingly linear, but I would like to emphasize this iterative and spiral way of finding and negotiation of the end result. Let me go through each phase a little bit more in detail. We have the first 2 phases of information and consultation, where information is typically a project overall phase, where we inform and involve all the participants from all the case studies. And then we have information flows going in all directions. We include both active and passive stakeholders in participating in these 2 first, in the first phase, I should say, of information. The consultation phase is also a 2-way knowledge flow, where KPIs are set with the help of data analysis. You build your simulation models, you iteratively feedback and remodel them through the 3 cycles that were mentioned in the center. You have only involve active stakeholders for the specific case. The next step is the co-creation phase, where you also work with the different stakeholders for the case. You act upon the agreed simulation models that you designed already and the inputs that you get. You work with the active stakeholders, and Moving on to the co-decide, co-decision phase, where you seek mandate from all the active stakeholders to act on the intended goals and functions. And of course, an iterative process there as well, working in the 3 cycles and through with the active stakeholders. In the co-manage phase, which is the last phase in the specific case, is you have you work with the owners of maintenance and sustenance of the solution is developed, and that lies on all the active stakeholders. So you actually work with all the stakeholders in order to find the resolution of the dilemmas that you might have determined. You work with the active stakeholders in the specific case. And then at the end, you have, once you have done those 4 core processes for the different cases, you might go into a dissemination phase of the overall project where all stakeholders, both active and passive, receive information regarding results in the project, and you have an iterative dialogue there as well. So to conclude, the results of this paper is we conducted a systematic literature review at the junction of simulation modeling and participatory modeling in the domain of urban logistics. We proposed a framework in the domain of urban logistics to bring together cross-sectorial horizontal stakeholders. We have, as I said, worked in cases where we have developed the simulation models and we have validated the specific simulation models in the process of developing this framework. However, what is still to remain is the validation of the proposed framework as such, and also the evaluation of the models. We also look forward to further vertical integration of stakeholders in the different cases. By that, I would like to thank you for your attention and open up to any questions or discussions you might have.